Before we start this episode, please be aware that we'll be discussing sexual violence and eating disorders, which could upset or trigger some people. I've provided links for support in the show notes. On today's episode of Speak Shame with Dr. Connie.
For as long as I can remember, I grew up thinking and believing that I'm not good enough. And the strategy of trying to fix myself to become good enough put me in situations that were dangerous outright. I abandoned myself completely in the process. And having, for the first time in my life, the felt experience of loving myself. The bodily experience of seeing all the parts of myself that I thought were wrong, shameful, too much for the world, an inconvenience, and just embracing them with total acceptance.
Hello, remarkable woman. I'm your host, Dr. Connie, medical doctor and survivor of sexual violence, and you're listening to Speak Shame, a collection of inspiring conversations with remarkable women who have faced and overcome adversity. By sharing their stories, my hope is that you may find strength, connection, and hope in your own journey, and that shame itself loses its power. Don't forget to follow the show. Joining me on this week's episode of Speak Shame is the remarkable Monika Molander. Monika spent the first 3 decades of her life trying to earn love and belonging through achieving, adapting, and fixing herself. It brought her to some of the most high-performing environments in the world, top universities, a career at Google and Meta. From the outside, an impressive trajectory. On the inside, a persistent conviction that she wasn't enough. It took a series of losses and 6 years of deliberate unraveling to understand what she had actually been running from. Today, Monika works as a self-leadership and embodiment coach, guiding ambitious women to stop performing for love and start living from it. She believes shame doesn't dissolve through silence or willpower. It dissolves through self-discovery. So thank you so much, Monika, for being with me today.
Thank you, Connie, for having me. Amazing.
Honestly, my pleasure. I'm so grateful.
Mhm.
And what I always like to do whenever I start my episode is to find out a bit more about you so that also my audience can find out a bit more about you. And I do that by asking this question. If your life story was turned into a book, describe for me what would happen in chapter 1.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for the question. I've never been asked that word before. It's a good one. I think the first chapter would probably be me in Costa Rica at a retreat, working with a shaman and having, for the first time in my life, at least what I can remember, the felt experience of loving myself. The bodily experience of seeing all the parts of myself that I thought were wrong, shameful, too much for the world, an inconvenience, and just embracing them with total acceptance. It feels like, it's in one way, kind of my second life started there. The experience was almost like being reborn in a way. So I think I'd probably start there.
Yeah, what a beautiful place to start. And, you know, could picture the scene almost in Costa Rica. And I wonder if you could lead us up to that moment, what sort of guided you to Costa Rica? If you could give us maybe a little bit of your backstory.
Yeah. So my backstory is that for as long as I can remember, I grew up thinking and believing that I'm not good enough, that there's something inherently wrong with me, and I just need to find what is wrong with me so that I can fix it. And it's not that I have a specific memory of oh, now I was loved and then I'm not loved. But as we all know, generational trauma is a thing. I grew up between Sweden and Finland, so we moved a lot. So I was always kind of the kid who didn't belong, the new one, and other kids looked at me with interest, like someone from the outside to potentially become a friend or to potentially befriend as something like exotic, or then someone to reject. So I was both kind of the interesting one that people wanted to be with, but also bullied and not really feeling like I belonged. And I grew up in a loving family, like most families, but I'm half Finnish, so there's war and kind of the generational wound that happens because of that. So in my family, we never really spoke about emotions or regulation or things like that. And I think it took a toll on the entire family to move as much as we did and be kind of the outsiders. So in that environment, I didn't know how to be with my emotions. I didn't know how to regulate. I didn't know how to really exist, and kind of drew the conclusion that whatever I'm feeling is wrong and it should not be like that. I'm too much and I need to silence myself. I need to be less of an inconvenience, and I need to be perfect in every way that I can, because then maybe the outside, the surroundings will be less kind of chaotic and more safe. And my main strategy to do that became achievement in every arena of life, but both in relationships, but also school and then later career, because that's kind of also societally the place where you get rewarded for achieving. And I mean, it's a double-edged sword because I'm naturally ambitious. I'm naturally curious. I love to learn. When I remember starting school, I loved the idea of attending school. But then it became a bit of a shock because everything was about right or wrong, grades. There's always something more to do. And because I had that strategy, I went very, very deep into it, and everything in my life became about a performance as a way to hopefully get to peace, hopefully feel happy and joyful and just get to relax like I assumed everyone else around me was doing. So that's kind of the backstory of why I felt the way I did, and the strategy that I then adopted. And I think the kind of the belief that I'm not enough, and then assuming that there's something outside of me, and then finding a fix that almost works, became kind of the perfect storm for me, because as soon as I had achieved one thing, I felt a little bit of peace. So I got some type of proof that, okay, maybe there is something here. But then as soon as that feeling had vanished, there was the next thing and the next thing. So even if I, especially today, rationally could see that that's not how it is, it became kind of a spell that I was under. And I think I know I had something in me, and I think that's what also brought me to Costa Rica and my journey after that. I had, even as a child, a memory of observing the world around me. I was a silent kid, not only as a coping strategy, but I also was someone who liked to observe the world around me and see what was going on. And I remember looking at the world, looking at the system I was in and my family and culture, and just thinking that this is not how we are supposed to live. This doesn't make sense. Everyone's running around, getting somewhere. No one has time to just be and play and relax. And everything is about getting somewhere else. And especially when the first person close to me that died, my grandfather on my mother's side, I was 11, 12, something like that. And I remember thinking like, okay, now maybe there'll be a pause. Like, now we'll sit down and reflect. But the world was just going on, kept on spinning. School waited for me the next day. And I remember feeling like this cannot be what we're here for as human beings. So I had that kind of felt sense that there is something else for me. I just have to, almost like a parallel universe, I have to find the door somehow. And in the meantime, I have to kind of play this game of getting ahead and trying to hopefully find something at the other side of the achievements that I was. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And I really believe there'll be a lot of women who can relate to what you're talking about and describing that sense of having to achieve to prove your worth and getting something and then getting that slight maybe dopamine hit of yes, I've done it, but then that then goes and you have to then achieve again. And I wonder, what do you feel was the turning point where you felt like, okay, I need to go to Costa Rica, or was it that you actually ended up in Costa Rica and just happened to experience that moment?
Mm. Both are true. What made me eventually, it wasn't something I planned, but eventually what led me to the kind of path of awakening, or path of actually maybe choosing, finding that door to the other parallel universe, was kind of, I saw the costs that had piled up. Because during my youth and teenage years, absolutely, it was in one way quite brutal because I spent so much time on school and studies and didn't really experience the normal teenage years where you party and go out with friends, because for me it was only school, and if I did something else, that took away from school, because I had the idea that if I don't succeed, I will literally die, like I will just vanish. And that made me kind of want to control everything around me, and then controlling my time and just putting as much effort as I could on schoolwork was one way of controlling, which eventually then also led to an eating disorder, because that's another kind of control mechanism. I found that I can control my body, I can control what I put into my body, as a way to not be too much, not to be little, again, to be perfect. And this was around when I was 15, 16, so after puberty, and again, being the observer, I noticed how kind of the male gaze changed as I went from being a girl towards becoming a woman. So then I also kind of learned, okay, so to fit in and to be a certain way that is accepted by those outside of me, I need to look a certain way, and controlling food became the avenue to that, but also as a way to just feel safe in something, like, okay, I can't control what's happening outside of me, but at least I can control my food intake. And then eventually, when I left Sweden after my studies and lived abroad, I found a bit of kind of peace from all of that control, performance chasing, even though I was in very high performing environments still. But I met people that I really connected with, and I found a sense of community. So I kind of felt like, okay, that my old self is now, she's not here anymore. I'm performing, I'm succeeding in my career, things are going great, but I'm also enjoying life. I'm having friends, I'm partying, like everything is great. What I didn't really realize is that another kind of chase was starting to creep up, that had always been there, but it hadn't been that visible. And it was the chase for approval and belonging and love. So in one way, the achievement things that I was doing in my younger years were kind of just a way to just be safe. So come from like a minus level to baseline, just like my basic worthiness. And as long as I achieved and could keep that up, I started then craving love and guys and kind of the male approval. And I have a complicated relationship both to my inner masculine and feminine. Naturally, I suppressed my feminine, and kind of my masculine became very strong. The like directiveness, the running, the reaching goals, all of that. But I craved to lean in to my feminine more, to be in the softness, to be in the cyclical, to be in my body, to feel pleasure, to enjoy food. And I thought that the only way to lean into that was if a man outside of me approved that. If a man outside of me kind of said that that's, yes, I can approve and love you for that. So that, but also just the longing to belong and to feel connected and to feel love. And up until kind of my Dublin years, I had experienced boys and men as either just mean or dangerous in some way. Like in school, they would always bully me for stupid things. They would bully me if I make fun of me, if I laughed too much at the guy's joke, or if I somehow show that I wanted to belong and wanted to be part of the group or wanted to be part of the gang. It was like, who are you to have these like silly needs? So that kind of push and pull for like wanting to have that approval. And then as soon as I got it, it was like, no, feeling like humiliated for even having the need. So I felt deeply ashamed of wanting connection and assumed that, okay, but if I then, the same way, if I just fix myself through performance somehow, maybe I'll be accepted. I had the same experience then with, okay, if I just fix myself enough, if I just adapt somehow, become more agreeable, less of an inconvenience, maybe then my needs won't be too much. And one thing led to another, but in Dublin, I, for different reasons, felt that I found that. I had a group of friends with both guys and girls. And I remember feeling like, oh, now I've made it. Now I'm like one of the girls who has guy friends. Because, well, I was never like that. And I always assumed that that's kind of, you made it as a girl if you can be part of the guy gang. And I even had female friends who would speak about their male friends with pride. Like, oh, I just hang out with guys because women are so difficult to be with, or there's always drama created around them. And like, now I see that that's just like the feminine being suppressed. But I saw that as like, oh, that's a virtue. That's something to strive towards. And because shame of who I am and the underlying belief that I'm not okay as I am, I'm not good as I am, and the strategy of trying to fix myself to become good enough put me in situations that were dangerous outright. I lost all sense of what boundaries are. I abandoned myself completely in the process and was just totally fixated on what are their needs. In this case, the different men that I had as friends and acquaintances and part of the group. And just was totally obsessed with what do I need to do to fit in, to not be rejected? How do I show that I want to belong, but not too much so that they don't humiliate me? How do I stay the cool girl, but also feminine, and also not too much of a boy, but not too much as a girl? And obviously this was nothing I was thinking about, but just was in my system, which then led me to a situation where I was abused sexually by a person close to me, which strangely enough, the conclusion I made from that was kind of that, okay, now I know that whatever I've done so far isn't good enough. And it kind of became like the final stamp of like, you're not, like whatever you're trying is not, like, don't you get the message? We don't want you as part of an equal friend or an equal human being. We want to extract from you and we want to use you, but when we're done with you, please leave. So the belief that I had that my needs are too much and I'm not allowed to have any needs whatsoever kind of became stronger. But persistent as I am, it's like, okay, well then I need to find, maybe this is still a sign that I can belong, and maybe I just need to fix myself a little bit more or do something else or just change a little bit, or, what is it that I need to do? For many years when I look back at the event, it wasn't so much the event, it was more how I behaved after. that caused me to feel a lot of shame and self-hate, because I told myself kind of the story of like, okay, you've been treated in a disrespectful way. Someone has crossed your boundaries and you don't do anything about it. You just stay, you just welcome more of it. And I remember sharing right after it happened with a few friends, and they were like, oh, was it at a party? Were you know, that's just how guys are, you know, you just have to, you know, don't hang out with them. Like, come on, just what are you doing? And for me, setting that boundary was impossible, because it was almost that then I say no to any potential of connection and belonging forever. So the kind of consequence was that I became even more agreeable, while obviously carrying a lot of anger and shame and self-hate and just a lot of things that I turned inward and suppressed. I was involved in a relationship where I took that loss of boundaries, that dynamic, that kind of use me in whatever way you need to, so that hopefully I will get something in return. And it became I can see today, kind of, I can see, of course, my responsibility in it, not from a self-blaming way. I can see the deep longing of a small girl inside me who just wants to be part of the group. She just wants to play along and like, can we just play and be friends? Can I be loved? Can I exist here? And because that was the intention behind it, wanting that, saying no to that meant then that kind of exile, that I would just be alone forever. The sense was that I would just fall into a dark hole and just never stop falling, and it would just be the end of it all. So instead of setting the boundary or leaving or saying no, I became obsessed with, how can I fix this? How can I fix myself? How can I change it? How can I adapt? What do I need to do? Which again, this was a time of my life where it was early in my career. I was ambitious. It was going good for me. You know, I was intellectual, smart, well-traveled, leading the team. I was a mentor, interviewing, speaking a lot about women's rights and feminism and also the Me Too era. So my kind of public persona was a strong woman who believes in the kind of female empowerment, and who believes in women speaking their truth and standing their ground and setting boundaries and not accepting whatever is given to us. And then behind closed doors, I was not doing that. And obviously the people who were close to me and my friends who witnessed it all couldn't like understand, like, what are you doing? So I felt very lonely in the experience, because I felt like I can't even talk about this, because I know the only advice I'll get is leave, say no. What are you doing? This is insanity. And in one way it was from the outside, but it's like going to a 5-year-old and, you know, she's, I don't know, screaming after her mother or father or someone to love her, and then saying, can't you see, mommy or daddy or the person you want, they don't want you, like, you're on your own, just go and find someone else. Like, it's physically impossible with the nervous system I had at the time. So those two experiences, and then eventually I've moved back to Stockholm and kind of left the community that I was in. And with that, I think kind of some of the illusion broke, because I saw that, or I had the experience that I lost it all. Like, I had community, I had a career, I had friends, I had intimate relationships, I had an exciting life, all of that. And then when I moved to Stockholm, it was like everything just vanished. overnight. And I realized like, oh, I thought I had quote unquote made it. And now it was just like the final fix of how can I make myself so that I will finally be chosen in whatever way that is. That wasn't true. It was kind of all, I had just outsourced everything onto these other things. And, you know, don't get me wrong, there was also a lot of good things in it. Like I loved my life abroad and the traveling and all the things that I accomplished and a lot of the friends that I found, but I hadn't really found the intrinsic self-worth. I still carried the belief that I'm not good enough and I'm not lovable and there's something that you just need to fix about yourself. Just one more thing, one more yes, kind of. And I had an accident around that time as well, a physical accident, which led me to having multiple surgeries. And then COVID came. So that created like a vacuum where I fell into a depression. And in that, I kind of just, in one way, the experience was that I give up now. But I think it was actually surrender, that I didn't really have a faith in a higher power, in an embodied way, more conceptually at the time. But something came to me, not a voice or anything like that, but I had an experience of like, somehow this is good for you, because now it can't get any worse. Like I didn't have my health anymore. I was completely isolated because I couldn't see people because of my immune system was so low after the surgeries and it was COVID. I lost the life that I had. And in that, there was something that started to guide me towards something else. And on that, one thing there was the Costa Rica retreat, that it showed up and I was like, I have to be there. And then I booked the tickets and went there.
Oh, Monika, thank you so much for your openness with sharing your story. And I can relate to so much of that. And I think this is why I do this, because I feel like we have different lives, grown up in different places, different experiences. But the way that you beautifully told your story there, I'm certain so many people will be able to relate to that, to the masks that we wear, to the wanting to be loved, to the little child within us that just wants to belong. And when you talked about how it felt so isolating, how you weren't able to share what was going on with those close to you because you knew that the advice would be, well, just leave. That explanation of, well, this is why I couldn't just leave, I think is so important to hear, because for so many people, maybe they haven't experienced something like this, but maybe they know someone who is in that position. Now they can understand why it is that perhaps someone isn't able to do that. So thank you so much for sharing that. And you've led us up to this point now where you described it as a surrender and that realization of, I need to go to Costa Rica. You came across this experience in Costa Rica. And I guess it then circles back to the beginning when you talked about this moment in Costa Rica where you felt for the first time that love for yourself. And I wonder if you could go into that in more detail, how that came about.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, it relates to uh, to what you said or referred back to in terms of like why I couldn't leave. And I felt that deep longing, that deep need for love. And I just kind of heard a voice, kind of like a motherly, divine mother. For me, God is a mother. And I heard kind of like, how can a child's longing for love be something to feel ashamed of? How can a child's longing for connection be something to be ashamed of? And with that, I felt the kind of beauty in one way, and the kind of, yeah, almost in one way, kind of like awe of her little strategies of like how much she, who then was me, of course, had done in terms of all the achieving and starting with schoolwork and then trying to be perfect in every way, and food and body, and then, oh, guys, and okay, who are they? And the whole masculine patriarchal system that, you know, women, I mean, the feminine, I believe, is suppressed in all of us, men and women. And in one way, maybe the longing for love is something feminine. I don't know, but at least it requires some type of surrender to at least be able to receive that. And then thinking that that has to come from the male objective gaze. And then finding something that looked a little bit like it, like here's a promise of connection and belonging, both friendships and intimate, and then being kind of consumed, someone who to consume. And then but still trying in different ways, like, oh, maybe if I do like this, or if I do like this, or if I become more agreeable, or, and then the whole kind of societal kind of, I don't know, spell or just like silencing, that I knew I cannot talk about this. I will be the one who's problematic. I'll be the one who will be asked the questions, why don't you say no? Why don't you set the boundaries? Or why don't you leave? And so on. And still seeing that I was trying in so many different ways. And then eventually actually finding a way out and just letting go and letting whatever I thought would vanish in me kind of vanish. And then that turning into a connection. So seeing all of that, it became like nothing of this was wrong or ugly anymore. Even the manipulative techniques that I had tried of like, oh, if I'm like this, then maybe he'll respond like this. Or if I become like this, constantly trying to manage myself so that I can manage the outcomes and manage other people, which was something I was deeply ashamed of. And seeing all of that and not looking at it as something that was wrong became kind of the avenue where I was like, there's nothing but love here. How can I hate or be ashamed of of the need that is beneath that, which is just connection? Then obviously, or perhaps not obviously, but it's not that my life changed overnight as a result of that experience, but I had experienced that, okay, this is what truth is, which shifted something deeply in me, because I knew that, okay, even if I'll go to those strategies again and again and again, because it's the default, I know it's not the truth. But when I was in it, I was so convinced that this is like, there's no other way. I don't know any other way. So I just have to keep on going. And I think that's something that I now, especially in the work that I do, and I work with women who many are so ashamed of the things that they do or don't do to try to manage things. And if we can just look at it and see that the strategy makes sense when you understand the need beneath it. And you can't remove the need beneath it, which is love, essentially, and connection.
Yeah, beautifully said. And yeah, completely correct as well. Developing that understanding, that the why it happens, but also developing a relationship with that younger person within you who is purely just trying to seek love and belonging. And you talked about the work that you're doing now. And actually, it leads me to one of my questions, in that, how has this journey that you've been on then connected you with others who have faced similar challenges?
Yeah. Mostly through the work that I do now. So I've since the year I work now as a coach, and I've been coaching for three almost 4 years, full time for a year, which wasn't really the plan. But as I started reconnecting with myself and my voice and my joy and my true ambition, like what I want to give to this world and how I can use my gifts in the best way, it led me to coaching. And I'm specifically coaching high achievers, high performing women who've placed their self-worth on their achievements, but also looks and body and partly also relationships. And so in one way, I'm connecting and meeting these women daily and hearing their stories and seeing how, I think you said that in the beginning, that we all kind of share, the story might look different. And the story, I think, partly is important. I think we need to own our story and tell our story so that we can let go of the story, because at the end of the day, it's just a story. It's just a series of events, at least how I see it, that led me and guided me to the truth that I needed to find and feel. With that said, we need to kind of honor the story so that we can be seen in it and be witnessed in it, because that's something that I see happens in the work that I do, is when someone shares what they're ashamed of and they're loved in the shame disappears, because the entire point of shame is to make us feel wrong about the thing we are, so that we won't do the thing that we are ashamed of. And if we just feel shamed of, let's say we hurt someone, maybe that's a good thing to feel shame for, so that we don't do that again, because shame stagnates, makes us freeze, makes us stop. But if we have chronic shame about everything that we are, it's ultimately disconnect us from ourselves and from others. So for me, the most healing thing has been when I've shared, like I did in the retreat in Costa Rica, but also through the work I've done with coaches and therapists and group programs and retreats I've been, where I've shared parts of my story or parts of what's going on in me or what I'm feeling, and it's just met with total acceptance. Or even someone, in a majority of cases, someone who says like, you know what, me too. And then it kind of vanishes, because it's like, oh, well, now there's connection. I thought I had to hide that in order to be connected. I thought that was not welcome in this space, but I shared it and you're okay with it and you even love it. Well, then I don't need to carry it anymore. So that's how it's connected me with others. And in one way, the work that I do is also healing on a daily basis for me, because I'm getting reminded constantly of whatever that I thought or think is too much with me is not too much. And I don't think shame is something like a one and done, that we just feel it and then it's gone. I think as we expand as human beings, we step into bigger rooms, more authentic versions of ourselves. At least that's been my experience as I've let go a lot of my old stories and my old patterns and my old relationship dynamics. Like, I know those things won't happen again. I don't have that in my life anymore. So I'm not ashamed of that. But then I'm faced with different challenges now, being my business owner and starting to speak about these things, starting to speak about my patterns, being creative, sharing my creative work. And that comes from who I am. And I'm like, I don't know, is that okay to just put out in the world? Is that too much? And in one way it's beautiful, because it shows them that there's a more true version of me that is being presented to the world. And it's just that the shame allows me to, the shame that shows up is kind of like it's something that allows me to go back and connect with that part of myself and sit with it and feel it, share it with others so I can be witnessed in it. And then I can go into even bigger rooms. So yeah.
Yeah, that's so well said. And I think it's really an important message that life is, the aim isn't to never experience shame, but what you're describing there is this awareness that you have as well when it comes up, and the fact that it's almost like it's guiding you when you become aware of it. Okay, there's this more expansive version of me, this truer version of me that is there to explore and to be curious about. And I was thinking, as you were talking about the work that you were doing, and also how earlier you mentioned how a lot of your earlier years, it was about achievement and getting the grade and being in a good job and so on. What was it like for you to then to transition into coaching and to make it your kind of full-time business?
Mm, yeah. Wow. Before I transitioned in the job that I was then, I kind of started experimenting with a different way of working because I had the idea that I don't want to take my old patterns into this new thing that I'm creating. Because part of wanting to transition was also to be able to live in a way that's more kind of suited for who I am as a person, which isn't the hustle 9 to 5 on every day. That doesn't suit me. So started at my job and connecting with, okay, what is it really that I'm hired to do here? How can I do it in a way that focuses on the output rather than my anxiety of not producing well enough? And in that, I found like, oh, I find kind of like the tension is between like perfectionism versus connection. That when I'm stuck in perfectionism, I'm self-centered. I'm focused on what others will say about this in relation to me, like that I'll get validated, that I'll get praise for it. And then it doesn't become about what I'm creating and putting out there. It becomes about me. But when I'm focused on connection, it's, okay, how can I create this presentation or this strategy to a certain client in a way that makes sense for them? It has nothing to do with me. So I started experimenting with that to the extent that I could in that environment, in a very heavy, like harsh corporate environment, just to get a sense of like, okay, there is something here. Then once I transitioned, it felt like the most natural thing. Like it wasn't this huge, oh, now I'm like finally by that life and now it's my new life and I'm finally where I'm supposed to be. It was just like, no, my life makes complete sense. I was supposed to be there doing those things, learning the things, creating the things that I did in my corporate life. In one way, I loved it. It cost me a lot, but it was also amazing. Like I could just see it for what it was. And then when I transitioned, it felt natural. The big kind of the work was around really showing up with complete authenticity and just sharing who I am and not having that much of a strategy or marketing plan or how do I get clients or how do I position myself? What's my niche? As soon as I noticed myself going into that, which is in one way because I've worked with sales and marketing, like I have that in my system. It becomes about, again, trying to get something. It becomes about control. It becomes about management and so much about, okay, can you approve me? Can you say I'm good? Can you say that you like my work? Can you like my posts? And the disconnection is there. And then I can't help anyone really. So really about trusting myself and that's just who I am and what I have to offer will help someone and speaking from that place and trusting that what I have to say is important enough. Because that was also like a big thing in the transitions. Like, why would anyone care about what I have to say? There are so many coaches out there. There's so many talking about nervous system and generational trauma and high performance. And like, yeah, why would anyone care about what I have to say? And is this really a real job? Or can I make money on this? All of those conditionings showed up again as shame. And then the story I started telling myself is like, oh, you're so naive. You can't do this. Like, this is not like, get a real job already. Like all the rest of us, a job is a job and it's work and it's supposed to be hard. No one said it's going to be enjoyable. So, just so that voice started coming again. And then my strategy and everything in life is just to welcome whatever comes. So I just welcomed it. And I saw, again, there's a little person inside me who's afraid. It's not my voice necessarily. I've inherited it from somewhere. Sit with it, be with it, feel it, and then do the thing anyways.
Yeah, lovely. And I mean, I know you probably have lots of words of wisdom, and there's been so much throughout this whole conversation. But I wonder if you could maybe give some advice to someone who feels stuck in a similar situation, what would that advice be?
You can't think your way out of shame or out of a stuck situation. In my case, it was kind of my thinking and my mind that got me there. So it's easy to think that more thinking will solve it. So I think just knowing that, okay, there's a different strategy that's needed here. And even if I don't know it yet, I can just try to find it, so to say. That's one. And then I'd also like to voice the fact that the shame we carry is never just ours. It rarely is just like something isolated that we just got from nowhere. Like it's generational, it's societal. We inherit it, we make it our own, we get it from the places we're in. And knowing that, okay, this isn't mine, even if it's kind of my responsibility to do something with it, I think for me at least helped me to start talking about it and start sharing with others. And that's the third. Even if it's just one person that you feel you trust, to just name, like, I feel ashamed of speaking up in a meeting, or I feel ashamed of my body, or I feel I'm not smart enough, or I don't think I have anything to offer to the world, or I'm lost, or this happened to me. To just voice it and allow someone to see you in it, I think is incredibly helpful. And something that will probably also help the other person, because it gives the other person permission to be who they are and let the mask go and stop the perfect facade that we carry.
So true. Vulnerability always begets vulnerability. There's so much that you've shared with us today, Monika, that I'm sure there are going to be people who are listening to this who are like, I would love for Monika to coach me. I need Monika to coach me. So if there's a high performing woman out there who's like, I would love to get in touch with you, how do they find you? What's the best way to reach out?
Yeah. You can get on my website, monikamolander.com. It's Monika with a K. I'm also Instagram at Monika Molander. So those two are great starting places. And you can also check out my podcast, which I call Self-Love Path, which the name came from that Costa Rica experience where I had that self-love experience, and it kind of kickstarted everything. So
Brilliant.
yeah.
I'm going to make sure I put all of that into the show notes. If you've not managed to catch that, I will make sure it's all there. Thank you, honestly. And I always like to end the podcast by thinking about the women that inspire us. And so if you had to name one remarkable woman who has inspired you, who would it be and why?
Yeah, it would be my grandmother, actually. And following that, my mother. It's easy to look at those who came before us and see everything they did wrong, but seeing how the world was when she was alive and the responsibilities she had and what she had to do and not do, and how much she had to sacrifice her life and her needs for me to be here, is something that I just find deeply, I find a lot of respect for that. Because looking at how she lived, I'm not sure I would have made it. And it's paved the way for me and what I'm able to do in my life. So yeah, that's the strength and resilience in her is something that admires me deeply.
Lovely. So yeah, thank you to Monika's grandmother, to Monika's mother, but also thank you so much to you, Monika. It's been my absolute pleasure speaking with you today.
Likewise. Thank you, Connie. Thank you for creating this space and making room for these conversations. They're important.
Thank you for listening to Speak Shame with me, Dr. Connie Corrali. And thank you so much to Monika Molander for sharing your story with us today. Please take a look at the show notes for information on Monika's social media handles so that you can connect with her. If you'd like to join the community, head over to @Dr. Connie Corrali on Instagram. And if you're a remarkable woman who wants a weekly reminder that you were never broken, then sign up for my newsletter, Born Worthy. You'll find the link in the show notes. And finally, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast to get a new episode every other Thursday. Until next time, take care.